Welcome into a Clippers Talk Live. I want to say the fifth edition of these we have done. I'm Adam Osland. If you missed the show yesterday, we had Carl Tart on, new member of the SNL writing staff. And then on Monday, we had Om Young Masuk from ESPN on. So it's been a great week, and we're going to close things out with a great guest. It's our friend Justin Russo at Fly By Night. KNITE is where you find him on X. He's one of my favorite reporters. We talked with Tom Arizarli last Thursday. He mentioned Justin in a certain situation that occurred last year because I messed up. I tried to book both of them to see who would respond first because I don't know. Both guys are hard to get a hold of sometimes. So I just figure I'd lob out a text, see who responded. Whoever was first came on with Clippers pregame show with me. But Justin, thanks for putting up with me. Thanks for doing this here on Clippers Talk on the live YouTube side.
No problem, man. I'm glad to be here. Glad to see you. It's been, I know, a couple of weeks since I saw you on Clips and Dib, but, it's always good to see you.
It's good to catch up. This is a new format I got going on. If you're listening to this on the podcast side, check out the new YouTube. I've had it up for about, a month and a half, not even 2 months yet. And I think we're about 2K followers, so I'm happy about that. And people are starting to come into the chat and confirm we are live and good on the YouTube side. Alan NG says, love Russo's work. We all do very much, especially Marcus Morris truthers out there. They've had his back forever.
I remember those days.
Before we get into some of that talk, I told you earlier, I told Justin in a text message, something I wanted to focus on has been one of the themes here this offseason is just the two-man game, the 1-2 punch or 21 blackjack, whatever you want to say, for the new two-man combination between Kawhi Leonard and James Harden being the focal points on offense now, no Paul George, and just how they have worked together in the past and what we can expect from them this season. So James Harden, and I did look this up over the past week, Justin, out of his last 12 seasons, 12 years in the NBA, since he became a number one option with the Houston Rockets, he has never been on a team that's had worse than a 12th ranked offensive rating, which is pretty damn impressive. In fact, on average, they're fifth. So he has a lot of times in there. He's had the number one overall offense, I think twice in Houston and then once with the Brooklyn Nets, even though he was only there for a little bit. So some of what people have wondered is how do they, without a lot of shot creators on this Clippers team, how do they make up for the loss of Paul George and still be maybe a top 10 offense somehow? Give us some hope if you have any. Just give us the realism here, I guess, or the realistic view of how this Clippers team could look with the 1-2 punch of Kawhi and James Harden now.
So the optimistic outlook is Kawhi Leonard and James Harden were both very good last season. They actually each had pretty low touches per, or at least Kawhi did, touches per 36 minutes. It was the lowest for Kawhi since 2014-15. This is for last season. So it was the fewest for him in about 10 years. For James, it was the fewest touches for him, just like Kawhi, since 2014-15. So the optimistic outlook is both of them were very good offensively last year, and the ball will be in their hands a lot more this year, assuming obviously health, which, I mean, no one can predict health going forward. So the optimistic outlook is the ball will be in their hands more. They were very good and efficient last season when it was in their hands, and that could lead to even better things potentially this season than some people might have thought with losing PG.
Am I wrong in saying I believe they were the two best guys when it came to isolation points per shot attempt or points per possession? They were the most efficient guys in isolation scoring last year?
Yeah, I've seen it floated around. I think Kawhi was number one. I want to say James was number two.
Yeah.
So, I mean, look, if you have two great isolation scorers, odds are you're going to have a really good offense just because if defenses kind of limit you to the shots that they want to limit you to, you need isolation guys who can pretty much get whatever they want. Now, they get it in different ways. Obviously, Kawhi's isolations, for the most part, rely on him at the elbows or in the mid-post or in the mid-range in general. For James, his isolations usually just lead to step-back threes. And it kind of tells you that there's no one way to be efficient in isolation. You can be an efficient jump shooter in the mid-range, and you can be a hyper-efficient jump shooter on threes. Both work to a large degree, and for each of them, it worked very well last year.
So, is there a chance that they could actually complement each other better? And it's not like it was bad between Kawhi and Paul George when they were both available. They won at about a 700 win percentage clip. They were very good when you could get both of them out there. But do these guys complete each other a little bit more, Jerry Maguire style, when it comes to James Harden and Kawhi Leonard, with maybe just doing more of the playmaking, which isn't necessarily Kawhi Leonard's strength, although he can, because James Harden is so adept in that
Right.
area, they might actually be a better tandem somehow with the Clippers.
It's possible. I could actually see it. I wrote about it a couple months ago where I think this streamlines their offense a lot more than it was this past season when the three of them were together. Because there were times last year, even during the 26-5 stretch towards the end of 2023 going into 2024, where at times it did look a little bit clunky and like, all right, your turn, my turn. We're trying to figure this out, which was very natural considering when the trade happened. There was no training camp James was there for. So it took time, but at times you also got to see how good their offense could be when everything was flowing along. But for the Clippers specifically, it seemed, and I haven't looked at the data specifically for this, but it seemed like if two of the three were on the floor, things did function better. Things seemed a lot more streamlined and simple and not overthought. So there is that, thought of there's only two of them now. Perhaps this leads to maybe not better offensive numbers and offensive rating, but in what could be seen as better offensive structure and fluidity.
Because guys aren't stepping into each other's spaces as much, where Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, you could see that happening sometimes. James Harden and Kawhi are so much different. It just seems like, I don't know, they're not taking away from each other as much on the offensive end. And I want to be clear, I don't think they're going to have a better offensive rating than last season, which ended up being fourth and was first throughout a lot of the season when they clicked in for that 26-5 run over 31 games. But I'm looking for, can they still be a top 10 offense? That's kind of what I'm trying to dig into here. Miles Johnson wants to ask you this, Justin. Big ups, Adam and Justin. Any chance Harden makes the All-Star team this upcoming year?
It's possible. The West is always tough for all stars because it always feels like at least one or two guys get left out. If the Clippers are exceeding expectations in the first part of the year, then there a distinct possibility will be that it's because of James and how good he looks with the ball in his hands more, both as a scorer and a passer. And it wouldn't shock me to see him make an all-star team. The one thing I've kind of grown to learn about all-star selections is it's not really what you do like throughout the whole course before the all-star break. It's really primarily what you do the first month of the season. And then like that narrative takes hold and you kind of get carried to the all-star break. So I think James could do it, especially if he comes out really well.
Do you think he could average an efficient 20 and 9 assists this season, and his minutes might go up a little bit? Because I think he was at one of his career lows at 34 minutes as a Clipper last season, even though it still felt like it was taxing. And there was about a month and a half stretch where he kind of had to rejuvenate and wasn't playing as fast and didn't have the burst until the playoffs started and he looked much better. Do you think, though, that's realistic production from James Harden? 20 plus points, 9 or more assists per ball game.
So basically, it's like, can he replicate his last year in Philadelphia?
Right.
I think he can. I think it's there. That year in Philly, he averaged 21 points and almost 11 assists. Um, Shot 44% from the field, but also took 7 threes a game, made nearly 39% of them. So it's like, if that James Harden shows up on, I'm not gonna say a nightly basis because that guy doesn't show up on a nightly basis pretty much for any player in the league. But if that guy shows up on the average, I do think you know there is positives to be gained from that. I do think that would allow not just him but the team to reach success that I know a lot of outsiders don't think is there for them this year.
Jonathan Ing asks, how do you feel the Clippers will be in the situations where Harden has to sit or load manages? The Clippers do not have another dynamic ball handler on the team unless it is Bones. Justin?
It's going to be tough. It was always going to be tough, even if it was just one of the, like, even when PG was here, if it was just one of the three who was playing, it was always going to be tough. But specifically without James, I do think it will be a lot tougher. I think they're going to have to get by on just defense in that structure, and in those situations where, all right, Chris Dunn, can you at least replicate some of what James can do? Not all of it, obviously. Chris Dunn's not that guy, but then give us the defensive side of the floor where there's value there from Chris Dunn, and offensively, can you just make simple plays and make a couple layups a night? Can Bones, if Bones plays, can Bones hit a 3 or 2 in a game? Can Kevin Porter Jr., depending on his situation, and the minutes that he gets this year, can he, like the thing? And I kind of equate this to a little bit like with the PG situation. You're trying to fill things not like for like, but recreate it as in the movie Moneyball said, in the aggregate. Like you're trying to create parts of things and just hope that it works. And I do think the Clippers have certain guys who can do certain things of a James or of a PG when obviously PG's gone. But if James is out, I think there could be enough, but they're going to have to buckle down on the defensive end. And it won't be pretty offensively. I'll just say that. It won't be pretty offensively.
You mentioned Kevin Porter Jr. there. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I was thinking that if he is available, depending on the investigation by the NBA, he could be suspended to start the season. Well, let's say at some point he's available with the Clippers and is getting some minutes out there and he's playing next to Chris Dunn or Norman Powell. To me, because of Norman Powell's, inability to really be a passer, he can't be the one in that situation. And I actually think Kevin Porter Jr. would be a better number one with the ball in his hands playmaker also than Chris Dunn. And am I wrong about that aspect of KPJ's game?
No, I don't think you're wrong. I think of the three, KPJ is probably the more natural passer. I think you look at a guy like Chris Dunn, he's an off-ball second side attacker and creator against a swinging defense. And for Norm's value of a passer comes when he gets downhill and when he's able to maybe not just specifically dump off, but make little dump offs or even just make the simple like strong side kick out to the corner. Those types of like you're not going to see wraparounds. You're not going to see like James Harden level passes out of Norm or out of Chris Dunn or even KPJ. But I think KPJ comes closest to what you would look for in terms of a number one creator there.
What's KPJ's ceiling in your mind? Who is he as a player? It's not someone who's played a game in the NBA since 2023, April of 2023. And there are a lot of unknowns because he was even a young player then. We know he had a 50-point game. People say it was against Drew Holiday. I went back and watched that game. He hit 10 3-pointers. A lot of them were not against Drew Holiday. The defense by the Bucks in that game was pretty atrocious. I'm not trying to take anything away. KPJ has a lot of ability, but people reference that and probably over-exaggerate just how much, he was hitting difficult shots against the Milwaukee Bucks in that game. But who do you think he can be? What's the, archetype or the comp for someone like KPJ in your mind?
I think a very reasonable thing to say here is I don't know, and I don't think anybody knows. Just because you said he's been out of the league for a year. He went to play in Greece, but I believe he only played 5 or 6 games. There wasn't much to go on there. We don't know what he looks like. I know he's done open runs and stuff like that, but those are open runs. And in a game setting, who knows? We don't even know if he's going to be able to practice with the team following the investigation for at least a little while. I don't know. I mean, the guy that he was before all of this happened and when he was in Houston was a shot taker, a good passer, not a great decision maker for a lot of stretches. Like there were a lot of not great things that he did with the ball in his hands, but there were a lot of really good things that he did with the ball in his hands. He and Jalen Green were not a great fit alongside one another. One of them had to go. Obviously, you don't want anyone going the way that KPJ did because of the situation and what happened. Never great. We don't know, though. Like, we just don't know. I think he can be a solid, maybe he's a 10-point guy with 3 or 4 assists a game off the bench. And that's a valuable guy. A lot of teams would kill to have a guy like that off their bench. But it's not just number-based with him. A lot of it is between the lines. Like, is he doing the proper things defensively with rotations? Is he competing defensively in general? Is he in the right spots offensively? If he doesn't have the ball in his hands, is he sagging too far off the line to where teams just don't even guard him because they know he's not getting the ball from there? Like, there are certain things that he has to answer beyond the stat sheet. So from that aspect, it's going to be rather interesting for me to watch, for other people to watch, and I just don't know the type of player that they're getting. And I kind of think the deal that they gave him shows no one knows what to expect out of him.
Yeah, there's just so many variables with the teams that he played on. The Rockets weren't playing defense at all then. He has the wingspan, he has the ability to dig his heels in, I think, on that end, but it's happened a few times in spurts, but overall, yeah, the book is out. We're gonna wait and see with KPJ and if he's available for the Clippers to start the season. Jonathan Ing asks this: given that Kawhi and Harden like playing a more half-court methodical offensive style, how is the team going to mesh more fluidly between a more up-tempo game versus half-court style, Justin?
So I think they're going to utilize what they tried to utilize last season, which is a lot of hit-aheads when they can. Like Russell Westbrook did help them in transition at times when he would get a hit-ahead pass, push the tempo, and even if he missed, there was usually someone else there to clean up, or he'd make a layup, or he'd get to the line, or something like that. And it wasn't just him. Norman Powell did it. PG did it at times. Kawhi would do it at times. Amir Coffey was really good at it. Terrence was good at it. It's a collective effort where guys have to realize, look, we're probably not going to be a good, or I shouldn't say good, you're probably not going to be a great offensive team. You're probably not going to be top 5 offense. So there's going to be nights where you have to manufacture offense in ways that are not conventional, where it's hit-aheads from James, where he gets the ball early on rebounds, boom, ball's up the floor. He did that quite a bit last season. He likes to find guys over the top, especially in the mid and low posts. That's been like a pet pass for him over the last, years of his career. So they're going to have to find ways, and KPJ can help here, pushing the tempo early in transition. When they do get stops, they can't just walk it up the floor unless the defense is already set on the other end. Like a long three, defense is already tracking back in transition. You don't have to push in that in. So you have to be smart and calculated. The Clippers, if I remember correctly, were actually I think an above average transition team last year based on cleaning the glass, but I haven't looked at those numbers in like a month, so don't quote me specifically on that. But I thought they were I think they were top 10 if I remember correctly. So they were a solid transition team. They just didn't run a lot. They're, as they kept saying many times last year, they're old. They don't run a lot. They're going to have to, rely on these young guys to get out and transit. Derrick Jones Jr. If Derrick Jones Jr. averages, let's say, 2 fast break buckets a game, I think the Clippers will be very happy.
Yeah, and those long outlet, quick strike passes we saw last season, that was an emphasis coming out of training camp that did carry over into the regular season.
Right.
Justin Russo is our guest here at Fly By Night. KNITE is where you'll find him on X. My guy, JMI1324 asks, do you think the Clippers need another scorer? I've seen a mock trade where you guys get Jordan Clarkson for PJ Tucker, Amir Coffey in 2 seconds. Justin?
I think they need another scorer, but I wouldn't say it's something where they need to go out before the season to find. I think teams are more liable to deal a guy like Jordan Clarkson during the season than they are before the season. I think you can get a pretty good deal on a guy like Jordan Clarkson this season. Now, I try not to do the mock trades anymore because you never know what a front office is going to do. For instance, I don't think anyone had ever even thought that the Clippers could trade what they did for Robert Covington and Norman Powell. I don't think anyone thought that was a realistic possibility to happen. We never know what teams are looking for. So, especially in this new CBA where teams are looking to get under the second apron, teams are looking even to get under the first apron. So, all of that needs to be taken into some context. I do wonder if you get to November, like middle of November, and they think that they do need another scoring punch, if they might actually do something like that and pivot to get one. But I also know they are hell-bent, for lack of a better phrase, on being a defensive team. They want a defensive first team. Jordan Clarkson's not a great defender. Obviously, he can score the ball pretty well. It comes down to like what the cost-benefit analysis of that would be. Like, are you taking away a positive to get a positive, but it's not as big of a positive as you're giving away.
Yeah.
It depends how they see that.
Is it a net positive overall considering his
Yes.
defense? That ties into this one here. Outside of the obvious, this comes from Miles Johnson. Justin, where would they upgrade the offense, or where would they upgrade the roster, I should say, if possible?
So the easy answer, and it's kind of funny because I have an article coming out in the next couple of days. It's like the 5 questions for the Clippers this season that they have to answer. And one of them for me is like, what's the overall plan for them? Not just general, but like in terms of the roster of where they need to fix things. Because this is not a complete roster. I think we can all just say that right now. This is not a complete roster. It's the roster now. It might not be the roster on December 1st or January 1st or by the trade deadline. I think they need to find a little bit more shooting, but the shooter that they get can't be a negative defensively, because then as we said, is it a net positive? So
Yeah.
they could use a little bit more floor spacing. It doesn't really matter the position. It'd be greatly beneficial if it was a backup center. Maybe they feel that guy's on the roster in Mo Bamba. I don't know. But they do need shooting. I do think, especially because of how much of the floor might be tilted towards James and Kawhi specifically, a lot of guys are going to get open shots, whether it's Terrence, and Terrence has to be willing to take them this year. I've seen him working out, the videos of him working out. He's drilling it down pretty good, but he's got to take him when he's open. Norm has to take him when he's open. Norm usually does, but you still got to say it. He's got to take him when he's open. Amir has to keep taking him. The biggest question from a three-point shooting standpoint for them is what Derrick Jones showed in the playoffs who he really is.
I've been saying it, yeah.
Yeah, like that is their biggest question for shooting. If that is who he is, a lot of their shooting woes, not all of them, but a lot of their shooting woes kind of fall by the wayside. If that's not, they need to find a shooter. Not saying like Derrick Jones Jr. can't play, but like they just need to find a supplementary shooter. And maybe that guy can be KPJ, especially off the dribble. I don't know, but they are a little light on shooting. Originally, I had thought, maybe back like a more steadfast backup center, but also I'm not certain how much actual backup centers will play. The only reason I say that, I do think we see Nico a lot of time at the 5. He will see time, obviously, at the 4, but I think we will see Nico quite a bit at the 5.
I think Kawhi could get some run there also. So yeah. I think it's a good point, depending on how Mo Bamba looks out there.
What doesn't help them is they did obviously lose PG, who for stretches of the season was a center for them. Defensively, he was a center for them at times in small ball lineups. So maybe that's the Nico job.
I haven't heard this one before. This comes from Luis Lemus. I've heard rumors of Kawhi getting traded to Golden State for Kuminga and picks. So what, they wouldn't do Kuminga for Paul George, but they're going to do it for Kawhi? I understand the contract situation with Kuminga, and they don't want to give him the max. He's a restricted free agent after this year, I believe. So they can wait it out and just match whatever team does make a run at him. How do you feel about this one, Justin?
They're not trading Kuminga. Kuminga was never even on the table for the Clippers. I can say that. And if they're not, I do find it kind of puzzling, though. If he wasn't on the table in trade talks and you're not going to give him the max contract, which, to be fair, I don't think Kuminga deserves a max contract either. But if you're not going to give him the max contract and you're not going to trade him, I kind of don't know what Golden State's pivot to that is. But that's also not the Clippers' problem, so they don't have to worry about that.
Wait it out and see if another team tries to give him the max. If they don't, then they could just offer him something less.
Exactly. I mean, he will be a restricted free agent, so they get to find out. I wouldn't trade Kawhi for Kuminga and picks. I don't even think it would matter what the picks are. The trade packages are so light these days because teams don't want to trade picks like they used to because they are so valuable now.
Yeah.
So I can't see that happening. And personally, I don't think the Clippers, well, it sounds weird to say like they wouldn't trade him to Golden State. I don't think they'd trade him to Golden State for Kuminga and picks either way. I just don't think that's something they would do. It makes them worse, and that's just too big of a hill to climb.
I don't think even with his injury history and how frustrating it's been not having him in the playoffs the last 4 seasons overall for the most part. I think Kawhi is a legacy player to the point where he represents them becoming a destination franchise for the first time. Regardless of how things went in the 2-3 era, Justin, this is someone that is a symbol of how far the Clippers have come. And to me, it makes any trade talks around him almost a non-starter. Is that crazy, or you're shaking your head? Do you agree with that?
I do. I wrote before free agency that the relationship between Kawhi and the Clippers organization front office is very much like on the best terms that they can be at this point, from what I've heard. So they're basically in lockstep together. We saw that in January, obviously, when he signs the extension when he did. You know, they are in lockstep with each other. I don't think decisions get made without them telling Kawhi. Now, that doesn't mean that they wouldn't just make the decision even with telling him. I just think like they would, like you do with every superstar, you rope them in on it. Like, hey, this is what's going to happen. I think you're right. I think Kawhi is a legacy player at this point. I think he does represent, their greatest free agent signing in history. How many teams in history have ever said that the reigning finals MVP signed with their team in free agency, right then and there? And they get to say that. And whether or not it works out in the end remains to be seen. But he's their guy. He likes it there. I don't see that changing.
I understand. People are going to say, but
what
what about
right
Blake?
Now.
Yeah, I understand people saying, but what about Blake Griffin? Well, I think it was a different situation because he was drafted by the Clippers, and I don't think they could have that happen again in a similar fashion and then be able to convince the next crop of free agents to come play here. So there's even less of a chance that they would ever try that again. And at the time, look, he still got paid more because he re-signed with the Clippers. They could pay him more than anyone else did, Blake Griffin, at that time, and still got all that money. And unfortunately, the Clippers saw early on in that first season on the new contract that he wasn't going to be able to last, and his health deteriorated quickly. We got a lot of questions coming in here, guys, for Justin Russo. I love this. Thanks to everybody for getting in here. Here's an interesting CBA one because you touched upon this a second ago, Justin. Jonathan Ing says, outlook on the league. How hard is the new CBA to do trades, even if the Clippers are under the second apron, when targets or what targets they may want to pursue happen to be on a second apron team, as an example? Does that make sense to you? By the way, they're under the first apron.
It does make sense. Basically, I believe, and he can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe he's asking, how hard is it for the Clippers to do trades right now with teams who are basically a second apron team? For the Clippers specifically, it's not that hard. They can pretty much take back whatever they need to take back money-wise based on what they send out. It's just, I think teams are finding it very hard to do deals, and you won't see large deals, at least for a little while, just because teams are trying to navigate the apron, but they also have a while to get under where they need to get to. Any trades that I think will happen closer to the trade deadline, just because by then teams will have like an idea of where they are standing wise and money wise. It is a rather fascinating subplot to not just the Clippers, but the NBA in general, that I think teams want to make a lot of moves, but a lot of moves are being held up because teams just do not want to be over the second apron. Like I said, a lot of teams don't even want to be over the first apron. So, it's kind of you got to wait and see approach. The Clippers, I can say, while they are into the luxury tax, I've been told to some degree that them getting under the luxury tax isn't like an end goal for them. Like, they're not worried about that. It's pretty much just an apron thing for them specifically from a roster building standpoint. So any move that the Clippers make, I think they're going to do it to where they don't go over an apron, even the first apron. They'll try to just keep it to where if we're in the luxury tax, fine. If we're over an apron, that's not fine.
Justin Russo is our guest here on Clippers Talk. We got a live for you as I sort through some of these questions. Oh, the guy who asked about that trade to Golden State says, it hasn't worked in 5 years, bro. Cool story, bro. What's the solution for the Kawhi Leonard issue with the injury stuff? To even think a team's going to offer multiple first-round picks for him right now, I think is unrealistic. I've never heard that Golden State report. I don't buy it. The Kuminga stuff isn't happening at this point. So it's one thing to just complain and be upset and be frustrated, and I understand it to a degree, but you also have to be solutions based and be solution driven of what you can actually do that's within the realm of possibility, in my opinion.
To be fair, I understand why a lot of fans are frustrated. I get it.
Yeah.
I really do. Like, I'm not gonna say like they were sold a false bill of goods or whatever, but like I think it was mentally torturing for the fan base to get their hopes up, especially that bubble season. That was like, I think that was the first step, and then 2021 conference finals round when Kawhi goes down, it's just like, how much more can we take? And then it was a lost season, then basically another lost season because PG's out, and then Kawhi gets hurt, and then this past season, and it's like, it's a lot. It's a lot of mental anguish and kind of getting over it, and a lot of people can't do it. And I don't blame them. I don't blame people who are just very frustrated, because I think for fans, you are allowed to be frustrated at things.
Be as frustrated as you want, fan however you want. All I'm saying is, at the end of the day, I don't think they're trading Kawhi. He's a legacy player, and I don't know what you would get for him at this point on that contract, given his injury history. So I understand sometimes it's a good time to vent, and Clipper Nation has been through a ton, but I'm looking for some answers here and not just lashing out. But we'll take all your questions here with Justin Russo.
I see a good one that's actually interesting for me.
Which one do you want?
From Old Dirty Dasher, how does the Woj retirement impact NBA Twitter and NBA journalism? I actually really do find this to be an interesting question.
Get it?
Because someone actually did ask me this yesterday. A friend of mine texted me and basically was like, "Hey, did you see the Woj news?" I was like, "Yeah, like it was crazy. Like it's speaking on it. Like I never thought I would see that. To be perfectly honest, like I never thought you would see not just the top newsbreaker, but a guy at the level of what Woj was. Like that is essentially the King Kong of NBA, reporters, journalists, you name it. Like
King Kong ain't got nothing on Woj.
Didn't have it for a while. But I kind of respect the fact that he, if the report is true, my friend told me that he turned down like $20 million over 3 years. And if that's true, all respect to him for that. Oh. If you go walk away from that to find peace of mind, amazing. But for the question, I think it impacts it greatly. I really do. I think it takes a lot away. It leaves a void, obviously, that I think people are going to try to fill. Obviously, the top two are Shams and Chris Haynes, but I do think that people are going to try to fill the void. And I could see it going poorly, but my one hope is that I hope a lot of the news breaking responsibility falls back to beat writers in general, because they are with the teams the most of anybody. And I would like to see beat writers just across the NBA sphere get more stories to report, like more news to break, because they do know the teams, and they know the personnel, and they have the human interactions. Not to say that, Shams and Haynes and Woj don't or didn't, but like I would like to see that be the end result. Now, will that happen? Probably not, because
it takes teams cooperating with their local beat writers. They have to be working in unison.
It does.
And we'll see. I think Shams is going to be able to fill the void, and he'll get the bag. But I think it's real that Woj turned down a huge amount of money, because as good as Shams has been, and there has been competition there, overall, Woj is still the clear-cut GOAT. He's been doing this longer. He has been just as good as ever. He never lost a step. He's in his prime currently. I think it's the coolest thing in the world that he's doing something for himself, because the breaking news game is one of the more difficult games out there, and often a thankless profession, because you really only get, I know there's Woj bombs and stuff like that, but you get anything wrong or get beat by the other guy to a story, and you never hear the end of it. So congratulations to Adrian Wojnarowski following his dreams out there.
I see Shark in the Box that Chris Haynes is a show for the players. That's what I'll say. everyone in the news breaking game, like the top of the line news breaking game, is a show for somebody. I've done it. Other beat writers have done, like, not to say shill in like a negative context. Like, you are getting it from somewhere. Someone has to give you the story, and you report it. And as the saying goes, there's always three sides to the story: their side, my side, and what's real. And so, you're getting it from somebody. Haynes,
Yeah.
if he does get it from players, which sometimes he does. Shams gets it from agents or players or front office. Woj gets it from front office or players or agent. Like, everyone gets it from somebody. Everyone who's giving you something has their own spin on it. Everyone has their own point of view on everything.
They get this information due to their relationships with a team, with a player. There's always an angle to it. People said a lot of the time, okay, Chris Haynes is connected to Damian Lillard. So take it with a grain of salt. If he's saying something that sounds like it's negative towards the Portland Trailblazers after the deal went down with him going to Milwaukee, well, it's kind of a buyer beware thing. You have to be informed on that, and you can read the tea leaves from there. It's not up to Chris Haynes every time to say, yes, I have a personal relationship with Damian Lillard. If you watch the interviews, you know what it is. So it's kind of on you.
And to be fair, there's no one I trust more on Damian Lillard anything
Yeah.
than Chris Haynes. That's also the other side of it. So
I
that's
think
how I
he's
look
great.
at it. So
I think all these guys are exceptional at what they do. And there's this misconception that they have microphones inside team offices and that's how they're breaking this news. No, they're getting information. So then you have to kind of delineate what's important there and read through it a little bit yourself. Here's another. Jonathan Ing says Haynes just doesn't have the track record that Woj or Shams have. No, he doesn't. But with Woj out of the game, teams are going to be looking for a new guy to give information to, and it could end up being Haynes if it's not Shams Charania. We did have a comment in here I wanted to address. Which one was it? This is interesting. JBoz84 said, I'm all in on bringing SGA back when he's a free agent. As if you were the one, my friend. Everyone here agrees that if they could do that, they would. Great. Just stay competitive and flexible until then. Problem is, in 2026, OKC is still going to have a lot of picks and flexibility themselves, and they may have won a championship by then. Now, I'm under the belief, Justin, that if they do win a championship, it actually gives the Clippers a better chance of getting SGA back because then he would have fulfilled his part of the bargain when they traded for him in the first place. Just like LeBron in Cleveland, he could leave after they brought him a championship and not be ridiculed. And whenever he comes back, they give him a standing ovation. There's nothing to complain about. I think it would be the same way with SGA. Like, he would have all the freedom he wanted if they win a championship in the next 2 years, which is very possible.
Yeah, look, every team with cap space in 2026 is going to be looking at SGA. Every team with cap space in 2026 is going to be looking at Luka Doncic. Just how it goes. The Clippers will. Other teams will. Just depends on, what deals they may or may not sign leading up to that. Clipper related, I think that is not maybe their number one target, but I think it is like on the list of maybe number 2 or maybe number 3, which is all in at 2026 free agency. Just get someone and just kind of keep it going. Because I think we have to realize and rationalize that the Clippers are not as weird as it sounds, the Clippers are not a losing organization. For the last 13 years,
yeah,
sounds about right. Now. 13, yeah. They've had winning seasons. And while, yes, that hasn't led to a title, they're still a winning organization at this point. They put in the infrastructure to be a winning organization. They're hiring people that come from winning organizations or have won things in their career. They have an owner who will spend money, obviously to a certain degree, based on the luxury tax penalties, which is why they worked a little bit to get under a certain threshold there. But, you have to look at it as they want to be in the market for great players. And I think Shea obviously fits that. He was very good his one season with the Clippers. They did not want to trade him, obviously, but you got to give something to get something. And
when I look at 2026 and the guys who are available, Justin, it makes me think how perfectly things lined up for the Clippers to even have that opportunity to bring in Kawhi and Paul George at the same time, and just how rare something like that comes about, because 2026 doesn't seem that likely at this point. It could change, but right now, you mentioned every team's going to be going for them, including two good organizations they're already with, retaining them. They could sign extensions before that even. But what happened in 2019 rarely comes along. And you kind of had to do that. Looking back, like how could you not do that at that time when you look ahead at the opportunities or lack thereof that are down the pike? Like it's so rare, and the Clippers had to strike. So it didn't work out. It sucks. It's frustrating, but I think it was good process, is what I'm saying. Very
Yeah,
good
I think
process.
I think the process was good. Everything after that, obviously, it just didn't work out. But the process was fine, um, and they shouldn't get crap for that. Essentially, like if you ask 30 NBA teams, all 30 NBA teams, would you sign Kawhi Leonard in free agency and trade for Paul George in 2019? I'm pretty sure 30 NBA teams would have said yes. If given the option, they would have just done it. The other thing I will say, and I want to shout out Keith Smith. So people who follow Keith Smith and know who Keith Smith is, Keith Smith has a very funny meme that he always posts. Whenever he posts about, because he's a cap guy for Spotrac, whenever he posts about how much cap space each team in the NBA has, he always posts a meme that said, as a reminder, cap space is not just for signing free agents, it's also for trading for players. So I would keep that in mind as well for the Clippers, that if there is a star or a star level type player who wants out of their current situation in 2026, the Clippers, based on projections, would have $78 million in cap space, or maybe it's like 75 million counting for cap holds, or roster charges, excuse me, that they could just give to free agents or take players in trades. So there's always the possibility of that.
Well,
And this gives them 2 years to identify, as Jonathan Ing says, disgruntled stars, or even just players that are just looking for, a change of venue, whether it's role player level guys or anyone among that ilk.
when you talk about the Clippers having a winning season for 13 straight years, longest current streak in the NBA, San Antonio had it over 20 for a while before they missed the playoffs and had a losing record a few years back. To me, what I see this organization and front office doing is stay competitive, refine the roster, and be opportunistic. And it's a hard thing to balance, but that to me is what it is. Staying competitive while having flexibility, it's not easy to do. But right now, they do have some of that when it comes to the biggest crop of free agents in 2026 and how things line up for the Clippers. So there's something to be encouraged by. Here's a question for you, Justin. Andy 8129-3 asks, is Jimmy Butler someone you could see being targeted? A playoff performer who isn't happy with this current situation? I'd take a year or two of Jimmy until we get to the 2026 offseason. Who wouldn't?
I could see them being interested. The only problem with Jimmy is not this coming season, but next season he has a player option for just over 52 million, I believe. So that could be a thing. However, I will also say this. The Clippers don't want money on the books beyond 3 years from now. So he fits in from that standpoint. But also boils down to, what would you trade to get him, and what would Miami accept in exchange for him? There's no way of knowing. Miami would have to be convinced that he's going to turn down $52 million when he's, I want to say, like 35, 36 going into that year. So they would have to be convinced he's turned down $52 million and leaving. Maybe he does. We've seen crazier stuff in the world happen. So maybe that's what his decision is going to end up being. They decide to trade him at the All-Star break if things aren't going well. But who knows? I wouldn't write off Jimmy Butler being someone they could target if the price is within a range that they're willing to accept, where they don't have to give up anything too far down the line or too much player wise or what have you. So, and I will say that Jimmy Butler was atop their list that 2019 summer. So it's what you got to go off of.
Yeah, it seemed like Kawhi likes him. And going back,
and Andy also asked another question earlier. He said, "Are the Clippers holding up the Terrence Mann extension talks
I got it. Yeah.
in case the need to include him in a trade scenario, or do you think it's strictly a contract issue?" So last season at media day, literally a year ago, I actually asked Terrence publicly if because he was extension eligible then, if he and the team have had any extension negotiations. He said no. I said, is an extension something that you would look to sign? He said, yeah. He said, I like it here. They did not have talks during last season. I know that I know that I can report that they did not have talks last season. Both sides decided not to because Terrence could kind of end up seeing what the market would be a year down the line, both extension wise, and obviously a new CBA came into effect as well. So you got to judge that from there. The Clippers didn't want to take, they didn't want to end up paying someone that they then couldn't trade if they didn't need to. But basically, I think the two sides right now are most likely trying to figure out what the price point is. Zoo's price point essentially came in at $20 million a year or thereabouts, I believe, right? It was like 360 or something like that, or 260, whatever it was. Terrence would probably get around that. So, and it wouldn't shock me. I think people also need to, I'm not saying anyone here hasn't, but the NBA consuming public needs to alter how they view contracts now. I don't think we can look at money anymore. I think we have to look at percentages. So like the Zoo extension, I think was like 11% of the cap for each season going forward, which $20 million for a center, it's all right. It's not bad. But then like if you look at it like 11% of the cap for your starting center, more than acceptable.
Yeah.
You'll gladly do that. And I think in Terrence's case, if Terrence got 11% of the cap, I kind of think the Clippers are okay with that because he is a good role player. He does embody what they like in players. He's a tough guy. He's been there from day one. He's the second longest tenured Clipper behind Zoo, and then it's Amir Coffey, which is hilarious to think about that those are the three longest tenured Clippers. So they like him. He likes it there. Remains to be seen, but I wouldn't rule anything out. I don't think it's crazy to think that he doesn't have an extension for simply they haven't come to an agreement on a number. Simple as that.
And he could be betting on himself this season that he outplays whatever contract may be floating from the Clippers side right now, and they have to offer him more, which big ups to Terrence Mann if he pulls it off. Greg said, I saw people asking about certain players on the Tomer Azarli stream. I'm wondering if a guy like Kyle Kuzma would be a good fit, which ties into a question somebody else asked about Kyle Kuzma. How do you feel about him? And playing still with Washington and our old friend Michael Winger, now the president of basketball operations there.
So the positives to Kuzma are he's been in the NBA for a while, so he knows the grind. He knows what it takes. He knows what it takes to win a title. Done that. His deal also runs through when Kawhi's deal would run through. So timeline-wise, that fits. I don't know if he's what they're looking for, though. I know he's a really good rebounder, or I shouldn't say no. He is a very good rebounder. Solid shot maker, good getting to the rim, but I don't know if he fits kind of the mold of what they're looking for. But that's just me saying that. They might think he's that type of guy, but I also don't know kind of how they feel in general. I just don't think he's the type of guy they would look at, but that doesn't mean he's not someone they could, get on I won't say relatively cheap deal because his contract is what it is, but they might not have to trade too much for him asset-wise.
Yeah, for a team that is in a perpetual rebuild right now, but it's relatively in a new era under a new front office administration, you could say. Kyle Kuzma is still 28 years old. He's just entering his prime. I like him. He still is only a 33% career three-point shooter, but he's somebody that can very easily average 20 points per game, and he does have a very high two-point percentage. So defensively, I always thought actually he was one of the Lakers' better defenders against Kawhi Leonard when they used to match up with the Lakers, and he has
a lot better defending as a four. That's the thing for him.
Yeah, he has a lot more ability, I think, on that end than a lot of people would realize. Kyle Kuzma's probably become on the underrated side, honestly, at this point.
I would say that too. It's funny. I think that happens to a lot of players who get traded
Go to
and
Washington.
yeah, but get traded and kind of fade away to anonymity somewhere in the league, and you don't see them a lot on national TV or what have you. And I kind of think we just, as a basketball public, just like we take them for granted and kind of don't pay enough attention to those guys, which is fair considering the TV deal and who comes on national TV.
No, but that's how you can find some value, though, too, where you can find some steals and go, oh, I forgot how good Drew Holiday had that to an extent in New Orleans. He goes to Milwaukee. He's on a bigger stage. He's in the NBA Finals, and people start to realize he's one of the most valuable role players in the NBA, one of the best defenders in the NBA. Jonathan Ing wants to know, under the old CBA, how much do you think T-Man would have gotten on the open market? The new CBA shafted the middle class of players by capping their contract ceiling.
It's a good question. I don't know the exact. I wouldn't be able to pinpoint like a dollar amount, but I think for a guy like Terrence, I don't know how affected he will have been from this new CBA. I don't know. It's really tough to say. I do, to a degree, agree that the middle class did get shafted in this one. I just think it's tough for a lot of guys. And yeah, maybe he did get shafted a little bit. I just don't know to the degree, and I don't know what he would have gotten the last CBA. Maybe he gets the same percentage wise as he will end up getting this year. What's interesting is the guy that I will say I think got shafted to a large degree, based on the CBA turnover, was Denny Avdia. I think Denny got a little bit kind of shafted because he was good 2 years ago, and then he signed that extension. And then the new CBA came, and I think I believe that was the timeline. I think he would have been able to kind of cash in a little bit more than he did with Washington before he got traded.
Hey, no bird in the hand. Frankie Boy 9 wants to know, Justin, why are almost all the sports news outlets thinking Paul George will be better in Philadelphia if Joel is injury prone too? That's interestingly phrased. They're saying that situation could go better than the Clippers, even though they have another star next to him that's also injury prone, like Kawhi's. I think how you interpret it.
Yeah. So I'll use an analogy, and this is not meant to slight the Sixers or Joel Embiid or Paul George or anyone there. My dog gets a bark box every month, and my dog has a million toys. He loves his toys. But when a new toy comes in a bark box, he loves that toy more. I don't know why, because it's new. And that's kind of the standpoint I have on this is everyone loves the new thing because it's the new thing. That's not to say it won't work out in Philadelphia for Paul George or the Sixers or Joel Embiid. I just think it's the new toy thing that's taken hold where it's a new situation and everyone loves the new situation.
The new shiny object in the room tends to take up.
It's like what was it? It was Family Guy, right? The boat's a boat, but the mystery box could be anything, even a boat.
Art H wants to know, this is a question that has been answered many times on here. What do you think about Zach LaVine as an option for the team? Also, get him for cheap and not give up top assets. There was a rumor earlier this summer that the Chicago Bulls were offering a first-round pick with Zach LaVine just to get rid of him, Justin. And in that very fine state, or under that context, I would look into it. I would, because the Clippers don't have any first-round picks, depending on if it's top 10 protected or whatever it is. And I'm higher on Zach LaVine than most. But I think the issue here is, and you'll elaborate on this, his contract could run past the 2026 summer.
Yeah, so I'm like you. I like Zach LaVine. I think Zach LaVine is a very good offensive player, and I think that does matter in the NBA. I think at times we have slanted too far defensively at times, not all the time, but at times. And I think what LaVine has done throughout his career kind of gets lost in the maybe one of the underappreciated guys that we were just talking about. But yes, his contract, not great for a guy who missed a large chunk of last season. But I wrote about LaVine last summer, and I said, I do think there is like a false sense of him being an injury-prone player when before this past season, he had played like 85% of the games over since he came back from his ACL injury. That's over like 5 or 6 years. So 85% of the games played would have been massive for a team like the Clippers to get. But there's no guarantee you're getting that guy, even with how great he is offensively at times. His contract isn't great, but if Chicago's giving you a first-round pick, maybe you do it. But I will say it's not something the Clippers looked heavily into, mainly because of the second apron stuff. It wasn't just like Zach LaVine's not a guy we like. It was more or less, we like Zach. We don't like what it would do to us if we got him financially. It's kind of like the aspect and along those lines. Not to say they were going to trade for Zach LaVine if they had to. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying there were ramifications at play that kind of never really made it a realistic thing for them.
Let's go to Old Dirty Dasher. Worst case scenario before the trade deadline, Clippers are out of the playoffs by then. Is a fire sale possible?
Yes, I will say that. Yes.
Is Kawhi included?
Yes. I don't think I think they would be foolish if everything wasn't on the table. I don't think you can go into a situation worst case scenario, they're bad, they're injured, or they're just bad in general, however you want to phrase bad. I don't think they can go into that at the trade deadline and go, well, we're not going to trade this guy, and we're not going to trade that guy, and we're not going to trade that guy. Everything has to be on the table, or else you're not doing your due diligence to make the team better down the line.
I think that's fair. Even, James Harden, he can opt out after this year anyway. So if you could get something for him before that happens, let's say his numbers are really good and he has stayed healthy, but the team overall doesn't have a good record or looks to be close to contention or even a piece away, then yeah, I think you do have to make that move. What about
what I will say, the only player guaranteed to be on the Clippers going into next summer is Ivica Zubac. The only guy. So out of all the players you look at on the roster, worrying about trades and stuff, he can't be traded, so don't even look there.
Sorry, Zoo haters. He's got the Lauri Markkanen sealed deal contract. Andy 8129-3 wants to know if Lonzo Ball or Ben Simmons get bought out of the last year of their contract, who do you rather take a gamble on?
So
LeVar has said he wants his kids playing for the Clippers. I wasn't sure if that was AI at first, but it seems to be confirmed at this point.
LeVar says a lot of things. I think we could all agree on that. And that's actually, in a weird way, I kind of like it to a certain degree.
Well, because he's never wrong or never lost.
Right. Right. It's rather interesting. It's an interesting question. It's because it is an either or. I will go on record. I like Ben Simmons. I think Ben Simmons is a really good player. I think Ben Simmons has taken a lot of, for lack of a better phrase, a lot of shit over the last couple of years. Fair or foul, I just think he has. I think he's a really good player. At his peak, he was very good. I think we do forget that this was a very good player, all defensive team guy, spearhead for their offense, getting Joel the ball, all sorts of good stuff. Obviously, back issues and what have you after that took its toll. Lonzo's the interesting one. He did show good things in Chicago. He really did. But I'm very wary of knee issues. And I'm like with Ben, I'm wary of back issues. If you're asking me to pick, I think I might actually go Lonzo. Because I do think there's a track record of guys getting over knee injuries better than back injuries.
That's not bad. Both I'd be concerned with.
And I guess I should mention he can shoot now. So you take that, I guess. Yeah. And he's really good defensively. I can't crap on Lonzo. Lonzo's a very good player when he's healthy. He's just not healthy. It's such a weird thing for both of them. I feel like they're just lost to the sands of NBA time.
I miss watching both of them play, especially Lonzo Ball, because of that passing ability. I mean, Ben Simmons was a good passer too, but I saw Lonzo more here at UCLA and then with the Lakers, and I was intrigued, especially after he fixed his shot. That is not easy to do, and I don't know, I have sympathy for LeVar's sons in some ways because he put such a spotlight on them. And look, he's a good dad. He loves his sons. They got into the NBA and all that, but there was so much height coming in because of him. And then Pat Bev picks up Lonzo, 94 feet his first game. But overall, outside of the injuries, I would say he turned into the type of player that could be a role player on a championship team that you need. So I hope he comes back at some point.
He reminds me, he's the Alex Caruso type, where team, because he's a connector and he doesn't do bad things on the floor.
Yeah, he makes positive basketball winning plays out there, which is something you need.
By the way, Caruso to OKC is such an insanely good move, and I hated it.
It's insane that they didn't get a first-round pick from the team with the most of them either, Chicago, which makes me think that first-round pick with Lonzo might be real because I don't know what their front office is up to. Jordan says,
Have you seen the White Sox? It's not going well there.
I heard over the last calendar year, the city of Chicago, sports-wise, has the lowest win percentage of their big three sports teams when you include baseball, football, and basketball. And obviously they have a couple of baseball teams. Out of anyone in the history of sports, the city of Chicago has the lowest combined win percentage of all their sports teams, the big ones, out of any team in the history of sports, which is
it's like who could be? So I thought of Charlotte, but Charlotte doesn't have a baseball team.
Yeah.
And
the Panthers are really bad once in a while, and they certainly are this year, but
the Hornets were bad.
It might be of cities that have a baseball, a basketball, and a football team.
And probably hockey, to be honest, because the Blackhawks
and hockey. The Blackhawks were really bad. You're right.
Yeah. Oof.
Jordan says this will ruffle your feathers, definitely. But I'm thinking Ben Simmons' Nets are in a rebuild and can get rid of these players that don't fit the timeline. He is 6'10" and a versatile defender. The only reason this would ruffle my feathers is because you thought it would. We know they're in a rebuild. We know they're trying to get Cooper Flagg. So, obviously, Jordan, I think it's all on the table. They will have a sell-off.
Can I just say, what a great job by the Brooklyn Nets, and I mean that in all seriousness, to getting all their picks back. It reminded me of that movie Draft Day, where he just ended up getting all his picks back for nothing. I mean, not to say Mikal Bridges is nothing, but you understand what I mean. Like, it's kind of wild. They just ended up with all their picks back out of nowhere.
Okay, there's been a question that has been posed multiple times. I want to get to it here, and I'm sorry. It's a very good question, but we went outside the Clippers for so long, we kind of have to circle back to what we were originally talking about with Kawhi and James Harden being the two-man tandem. Bastian Schweinsteiger, Schweinsteiger. So is he in Germany right now? Maybe.
So Bastian Schweinsteiger was a famous soccer player.
Oh, so I'm just a casual when it comes to football.
Yeah.
Should the Clippers look at Dallas's finals run as a blueprint for their ceiling as a team this season? 2 stars playing surgically half-court isolation offense supplemented with athletic wing defenders. Justin?
Yes, to a degree.
Bad.
Yeah, it's not bad. That's
especially with Derrick Jones Jr. now.
Yeah, especially with Derrick Jones Jr. Yeah, to a degree. I think that's a viable way to look at it. Now whether or not they can deliver to that degree is obviously remains to be seen. But I think there is something there. They have the defensive center, anchor, and pick and roll threat in Ivica Zubac, who can supplement some of the offensive, like the necessary offensive baskets around the hoop that they might need. Because the Clippers do get jump. Maybe they won't be as jump shot heavy with PG gone. I don't know. I think they still will because Kawhi takes a lot of jumpers and James is basically – I haven't looked at the numbers. I want to say like James probably took 80% shots of the jumpers last year, if I had to guess. I'm probably only wrong. It just felt like 80% of the time he was shooting the jumper. But yeah, I do think there are things you can take from Dallas from in that scenario where, as you said, 2 isolation heavy players, athletic wings athletic wings around them who can see. That's the thing that's actually interesting from this. Defensive wings who take pressure off Kawhi specifically are very valuable. Kawhi wasn't guarding on the ball as much last year as he had in the past. And I think that also allowed him to save his legs while he didn't play, while the playoff thing happened, whatever. Um,
68 games was the most he had played since what, the 2016-2017 season
yeah,
with San Antonio?
yeah. So like, and that was the best I've seen him offensively. Like his legs were saved to a large degree. They did everything to save him. I think that's the way forward. So I do think that can be the blueprint. It just depends on everyone pulling in the same direction and whether, to some degree, whether or not Derek Jones is still, like a 36, 37% three-point shooter.
That's the thing. I'm very skeptical about it, only because body of work wise, I think in his career, he's shooting about 31% from three. Last year during the regular season with Dallas, he was at 34%. Then in the playoffs at 37%, which was actually much higher before the NBA Finals. It was over 40%.
Right.
And then he had a really bad series against Boston. But he's 27. He's improving. This is his first big contract, non-minimum type of contract. And I'm hopeful that he's still getting better and still just developing his ball game. Who do we have here? Oh, Grant Mona had this earlier. He asked, very curious about closing lineups. Harden, Norm, T-Man, DJJ, Kawhi. I'm looking for a new Powell Rangers lineup without Paul George. That's what I've been thinking about a lot, Justin.
Yeah, you know what? The closing lineup stuff is actually rather interesting. I think it'll be, obviously, Kawhi and James will be there regardless. I think the other three spots are entirely up to just fit that night. I think there's enough guys to where, look, for instance, let's just say a team that they're playing on a given night has, let's say they're playing the Dallas Mavericks, for instance, right? Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving. Maybe you play Derek Jones done to at least have 2 point of attack defenders against those two guys, to where James doesn't have to do it, Kawhi doesn't have to do it, and the fifth guy can be whoever you want. Now, Dallas plays small, so Batum likely plays the five to close that out. I do think Manny says he thinks Batum will close. I do think Batum will be a closing lineup guy for a large stretch of the season, if he's healthy, if he's playing, etc. Like, he's too smart not to be. I think that's what they value. They need the smarts, especially going small. But closing lineup is going to be a very big question for them going into the year, and they're going to have to stumble upon some things as well.
I wonder if I thought about this the other day. From closing to starting lineups, it's all but assumed, we hope, that we see James Harden next to Terrence Mann, next to Derek Jones Jr., next to Kawhi, next to Ivica Zubac. Do you think there's at all a chance that actually we see Batum start the 4 to slide Kawhi down to the 3, then Derek Jones Jr., then James Harden, meaning Terrence Mann's the one coming off the bench?
No. And
Okay.
the reason I say that is because Kawhi's a 4.
But he said last season, until we get a real one. He said that verbatim. I'll play it until we get a real one.
I'm going to be perfectly honest. Kawhi's the real 4. And I hope he realizes that. He's the 4.
Is the real 4 in the room with us?
Yeah, he's the 4. Defensively, he will be the 4. Most positions are designated now based on defense. So I think he will be the 4. I think he's going to be the low man, helps who suffocates passing lanes at the nail or, on the weak side. I think he's just the 4. And Derek's going to be the 3. Now, offensively, Derek will be the 4, where he's just parked in a corner most likely. But defensively, Kawhi's the 4. Kawhi's not guarding on the perimeter as much as he used to. I hope that Kawhi just not accepts, but I think he understands that he is going to be the 4. That doesn't mean that you're not going to see Kawhi, Nico, Zoo out there together. But in that instance, Nico's probably the 3. He's going to be guarding on the ball, and Kawhi's still going to be off the ball defensively. So I wrote the 4 last season, and I want to say exit interviews last year. I say last season, meaning 2023, that the best way forward for the Clippers was to understand that PG was the 3 and Kawhi was the 4, rather than trying to keep playing them at the 2 and the 3. And it was really good. Like, that's when a lot of their success happened last season, obviously. So I think they understand that Kawhi is the 4. But I mean, I just don't think that's just what he is now. His knees are not great enough to play the 3. Like,
You think it's more
heavily
taxing to have to be on the
Yeah.
perimeter and chase guys around
Yeah.
rather than bang bodies on the interior?
Well,
Pause.
this is the other thing for me. What fours are out there that he has to go up against that are physically daunting for him?
It's
Like
not C-Web, KG, and Tim Duncan anymore.
Like Julius Randle, yes, but you see him twice a year.
And he still takes a lot of shots around the perimeter.
Right. So it's tough. The game's changed. The fours are different now. You know, like for instance, you looked at Denver. Denver's four was Aaron Gordon, who did hang out on the perimeter a lot. Sure, he went around the basket for dunks and, you know, cut layups and stuff like that, but he was on the perimeter a lot. You know, so I just don't think there's a lot of fours that are physically going to be taxing for him.
I don't know. Jordan says you're wrong. Kawhi at the 4 is awful for his health, even though he just played 68 games starting at the 4, which is the most he's played in almost a decade.
It could be bad for him in the long run, but I don't think the Clippers have the benefit of long run here. I think it's a day-to-day, week-to-week, game-by-game assessment. I think at the 4, they have a better chance of not just surviving in the interim, but, you know, succeeding.
Jordan's kind of been out to lunch here the past couple of lives. He was talking about Kai Jones starting over Ivica Zubac. KPJ is going to be the starting shooting guard. He doesn't understand why Batum would be in the fourth quarter. Why would you be yelling, why the F Batum in? You want Nicholas Batum in late in games. Have you watched Nico Batum? My God. All right, Jordan, you're cool still. Let me ask you this. Oh, I like this question. I think this is interesting. How would you feel if the Clippers moved Norman Tucker for Tobias Harris at the deadline? That comes from Andy 8129.3. His contract's up summer of 2026. He's got 2 years left on his deal, no player option. He'll be an unrestricted free agent, Tobias Harris, in the summer of 2026, which does line up with the Clippers' plan.
Is that when Norm's deal is also off the table?
Yeah, he's got 2 more years too.
It's tough.
Is it more of a position of need because Tobias could play some 4 here and there and a 3 and 4, obviously?
It depends. Like, it depends what they deem a position of need. I think there's been a lot of Tobias Harris hate when Tobias has been a good NBA player for a long time, but also the question here isn't would you trade those 2 for Tobias Harris? And I don't mean to disparage PJ Tucker here. It's would you trade Norman Powell for Tobias Harris straight up? And I don't know. Would Detroit do that? That's the other question. Detroit knows Tobias Harris very well, so I don't know.
We know Tobias. I like Tobias. I know
I do too.
He was paid $50 million almost in Philadelphia, and that wasn't going to go well because Jimmy Butler, they let him go. Yeah, tell Elton Brand what we love, but that's the guy who made that decision.
Tobias Harris didn't walk in and make them give him $50 million.
Yeah, he's supposed to turn that down. I don't understand what you want from these guys. Do you think? I have to ask you this. I even had it in my notes. Old Dirty Dasher asks, why are they bringing PJ to camp? And I'm wondering if maybe Justin Russo has some advanced numbers that prove PJ Tucker's worth on the floor. Like maybe there's a higher rebounding percentage when he's out there, even though he's not the one doing it. Because that's how it was for Marcus, right?
I ain't got that.
Do you got anything? Is there any benefit to PJ Tucker at this stage of his career? Outside of a couple minutes against Zion, a couple minutes against Jokic, and I mean a couple literally, but I do like him as a kind of a change of pace against some big bodies.
So to answer the question, why are they bringing him to camp? Because he's under contract. That's why. Like
because he opted into $11 million,
which I think he should have.
Of course, but if he says, I didn't sign up for this time. After he opted in when he could have been a free agent, I don't want to hear that stuff. I'm sorry.
Boy, it's a really interesting situation, ain't it?
I've asked everybody on here that has come on recently, are he and Bones coming to training camp?
Like, are they at camp? I would be shocked if they are not at camp.
I would be too, but okay, I'm going to say I wouldn't be shocked. They were sent home last season at one point. They do want bigger roles. Lawrence Frank talked about that at the presser for Team USA with Kawhi Leonard, that they're searching for a trade. And if they could find one, I'm sure it would be done by now.
I was sitting across the table when that part happened.
So really, nobody's offered them enough yet for these two guys. And it hurts my heart because I want Bones. I would love for Bones to get a real opportunity like we saw early before they brought in James Harden last season. Even though I wanted James Harden and all that, it made it funky with Russell Westbrook.
So what I will say is I stand with the players on this who want a larger role. I think every player should want a larger role. I think it's weird when players don't want a larger role. However, what I will also say, I don't know what the roles that they're looking for. I don't know if the roles that they're looking for on this team actually even exist. I think a role could exist for Bones, but the role for Bones only exists if KPJ wasn't here.
Right.
The role for PJ possibly exists if Nico's not here. But
yeah,
I don't
Bones
know.
is behind KPJ and Chris Dunn now, and James Harden. Like
Norm.
There's no clear path. And he was the best guy, they said, in training camp last year, the most impressive guy year to year.
He was good.
With the progress he made. He was averaging 15 points per game his first 5 games of the season. He looked great.
He was, dude. I think he started.
I know.
Like a couple games.
I loved it. I said I'm holding the skeleton key. I attached.
Remember the game in Chicago?
He balled out. I thought it was all going to happen. And then he had 39 towards the end of the year in that game. Who was it against? Phoenix? He had a huge...
Yes, where they started triple teaming him. Yes.
At the very end to not let him get to 40.
Yeah.
Bones is a bucket!
So, I think I think there's a better case for Bones having a place than PJ. I think PJ's situation is just tougher. $11 million, finding a team that will take $11 million in this cap climate is basically an impossibility. They're not going to waive and stretch him. It would get them under the luxury tax if they waived and stretch him. They're not going to waive and stretch him. They could waive him. They could waive him the closer they get to the trade deadline, or even right after the trade deadline. If no one comes and gets him, they could just outright waive him and basically just be done with his contract at that point. Because if they waive and stretch him, his contract goes over 3 years, which the benefit of that is you get under the luxury tax. Yeah. But why would you want to keep that on your books for 3 years when you can just be done with it in 1? So, yeah, if they get to the trade deadline and there's no trade possibility, I could see them waiving him after the deadline so that a team like a Miami or a Milwaukee can go out there and just sign him so that he's still eligible for the postseason. But look, I don't see the harm, as weird as it sounds, I don't see the harm in bringing him to camp and seeing what he has. I really don't, because of the 1 or 2% possibility that he really does like show out and show you that he deserves a spot.
Sorry, we talking about Bones or PJ here?
For both of them, actually. I don't think it's crazy.
I think we know what they have with PJ Tucker. The harm would be his attitude. If his attitude isn't right, like there's only like a downside, because I think we know who he is as a player at this point, and it doesn't look like he's going to be playing on this team.
What I will say to that, and people can take this however they want, a lot of the attitude issues with the team have left. And I don't think PJ, while he can be surly at times, is going to – I don't think PJ Tucker's attitude is going to scuttle the Clippers season.
I can't believe that stray just hit Mason Plumlee like that. I can't believe you're saying he was the attitude problem on the Clippers.
I mean, look, people can take it for whatever play they want. I'm not saying names. I'm just saying in general.
Sure.
A lot of the attitude problems are gone.
Okay. Andy 8129-3 wants to know. Well, I guess he's making more of a statement, but he likes the idea of them trading Bones, PJ, and second rounders to the Nets for Dorian Finney-Smith. He'd be great next to Kawhi. Yeah, I think they can get more than that. Sorry, bro. Unless they really value Bones, I think they might be able to get a first from somebody for Dorian Finney-Smith.
I also don't know what Dorian Finney-Smith is. I think we've
I like
with
him.
Dorian Finney-Smith. I like him, but I also feel like we've reached the standpoint of Dorian Finney-Smith where I think we all like the idea better than what he is.
Okay. That's a fair statement. I'm trying to pull up his numbers from last season. So he was at 8.5 points per game. He only shot 35% from the outside. That was one of his lower seasons there. He's available.
He left Dallas. He left Dallas and kind of forgot how to shoot.
Yeah, that's fair because in Dallas he was shooting like 39% back-to-back years.
And even had 35.5 the half season he was there before he got traded. But like, I don't know, maybe he's just bummed about being in Brooklyn. I mean, it wasn't a great situation. Who knows?
So I'm not the one following up here, Justin, but our smart listeners here want to know who was that player that you had that cryptic comment about? JM.
It wasn't a player, it was plural. I think there were several players who just weren't happy. And I think when that happens, which is a fair feeling for a lot of people to have. I'm not sitting here and saying they were wrong, okay? Like people can feel how they want to feel. But
were these players maybe friends that played on a team together before the Clippers, or I'm just JM wants to know. Okay, sorry.
I think it can bleed into the team and sap it a little bit. I just don't think PJ's attitude is going to be an issue on a team where he clearly is not I wouldn't even just say, I'm just going to say top 8 rotation guy. Because from there on, you could gripe about, hey, is he the 10th or 11th or 12th? Like, we can gripe all day. But he's just not a top 8 or 9 rotation guy. I don't think that guy's going to cause problems. And if he does, if that guy causes problems, it's a more fragile team than they would care to admit at that point. You getting robbed right now?
Did Ohtani just did he
go
get
50,
to 50? Oh my God, he's at 51-51 now. He started this game at 49 steals and 48 home runs, and now he's at 51-51. My God, Goat Tani is at it again.
So Jordan, he was on my team. I'm an Angels fan. He was on my team for many years.
So sorry.
It's all right. I'm actually happy for him. But what my Shohei Ohtani story is, I saw him in high school in Japan when he was 18, and I was blown away because like I'd read scouting reports on him from like Baseball America and like the really like in-depth like scouting analysis of him from the guys who do it like year round. So I saw a video of him at 18. I want to say this was 2012 at the time, I believe. And he was incredible. And I fell in love right there. And then the Angels signed him, and I was so happy. And I'm happy for him now because he's crushing. Dude, he's the greatest baseball player
ever. Yeah. Babe Ruth played during segregation. I don't want to hear about Babe Ruth compared to Ohtani in today's day and age.
He's the greatest talent I've ever seen in baseball. I still think Barry Bonds is probably the greatest baseball player of all time, but Ohtani to me is the greatest talent I've ever seen in baseball.
I'm a Giants fan, and I'm taking Ohtani because I know Barry Bonds never hit 50 home runs before roids. I mean, I've read Game of Shadows.
Allegedly.
I know what the deal
was.
Allegedly nothing.
We got to say allegedly.
Read Game of Shadows. No, we don't. It's a fact. They have the receipts. Victor Conte and the guys have the receipts.
I know how much you love receipts, so this is up your alley.
Well, I'm the receipt master. All right.
Right.
Jordan,
CVS over here.
Am I going to have to keep receipts on this wild trade package? Jordan says, I think packaging Norman Powell, Bones Highland, Chris Dunn for Ben Simmons would be good.
No. Yeah, you just don't take a flyer. Obviously trading for Ben Simmons requires a lot of money because I think he makes like $40 million. But I don't think that at that point the Clippers would trade a guy like Norm unless they're trying to get cap space now for next summer. That's the only upside.
Ben Simmons has played less than 60 games combined his last 2 seasons, guys. But yeah, let's bring in an injury-prone guy to the Clippers. Okay, Bastian, our German friend, says Norman PJ for John Collins at the deadline. never heard this name. John Collins. Jazz get off of Collins before his $26 million player option in the 2025-26 season. They also take on PJ as they have no direction as a franchise at the moment. The problem to me with this is Norm is under contract for 2 more years, so why would they do that?
I'm just not a John Collins guy. That's a me thing. I know a lot of people who are like John Collins. I'm just not a John Collins guy. Seeing him up close, seeing the way people have described him defensively specifically, I'm just not a John Collins guy. I like the idea of John Collins. I'm just not a John Collins guy. And as far as Utah's direction is just to be where they're at right now and to keep taking as many swings at the fences as they can to keep improving. Because I'll tell you this right now, if they get Cooper Flag, they're set. And you can't convince me otherwise.
I agree. Danny Ainge he's working it there. John Collins did average 15-9 while shooting 37% from 3 last season. Is still only, I think, 26 or 27. So I'm intrigued. I also, though, wonder, maybe you can speak to this more. I didn't watch him a ton last season. Is he still the ridiculous athlete he was with Atlanta when he could put his head on the rim like he used to? I think that dunk on Embiid.
So he is, but not to the same degree. It's dwindled, but when I say dwindle, I don't want people to think like, oh, he's not as athletic. Like, it's just like a notch below where he was.
Okay.
And that's just natural because of age.
Yeah. JM1324 wants to say, JMI, why in sports culture, when a player leaves from a situation, they get blamed for everything that's happened, regardless of the good moments they had? Give me an example.
Well, I think he's talking about like PG to a degree.
What?
Here's how I'll say it. Because I think sports fans, to a large degree, have a hard time separating the good from the bad when it comes to emotions. I think that, like, when a player leaves, I say we, the sports fan contingency, generally think that if things were good, the player would stay. And, like, the fact that they're leaving means that they just weren't good enough to deal with this. So we kind of, like, pile on with them. I don't agree that players should get blamed when they decide to leave.
PG is getting blamed because he took shots at the organization on his way out, shots that are directed at the fans in some way when you talk about the B team, and then his dad saying we felt like we got stabbed in the back.
Oh, he said I'm speaking in general, not PG. So in general terms.
Well, I'm speaking specifically about PG. Because in general, it's a case-by-case basis for me always. Tell me the player, and I'll tell you how it should be viewed.
Yeah, I don't know. The older I've gotten, the kind of less I've understood why fans kind of pile on players to a large degree. Because their job's tough. Like, whether or not you say, like, they make X amount of money, their job's still tough. It's not it's a great job, but it's still tough. Like, it's, they're open up to ridicule. Go ahead.
Fans are still smart enough today. We brought it up earlier. Do you think Philly fans are mad at Jimmy Butler for leaving? Or do you think they're mad that they made the decision to keep Tobias Harris over him and mad at the front office? They're pointing at the front office. They're not mad at Jimmy.
If I know Philly fans, they're just mad at everything.
Well, that's fair.
they wake up mad, okay? Like, it's just in their spirit.
I'm going to put a smile on everyone's face as I get this question asked from Frankie Boy 9. When is the Ralph Lawler interview coming? Soon. Probably next couple of days. I would say at worst on Monday. I don't want to put too much pressure on my editor, but the Ralph Lawler sit-down one-on-one 2-part interview is coming up within the next 4 or 5 days. Dataman asks, what should be our expectations of the Clippers coming out of camp? Should they be rolling like they did in January? They're not going 26-5 again, guys, or a slow build-up expected. NBA Cup champs, let's go. What are the expectations, Justin?
What to expect?
This would be a good way to end things.
Yeah. You know what? I think they'll be fine. When I say fine, I don't mean like they're going to win 55 games. But I do think they'll generally be fine. I think it could be a slow ramp up. To where, like, they come out playing Phoenix. That's going to be an interesting matchup right off the bat because Phoenix has a lot to prove themselves. and it's the Clippers' new arena home opener, and they're going to be fired up. The fans are going to be fired up. So I would, in terms of expectations, early in the season, I think it could be a slow ramp up with an early season. Like, I think they'll start out good, probably dip just a little bit, and then kind of have like a steady trajectory after that. So, it's hard to say, but I'm kind of expecting them to be good and fine. I think overall, what would I place them for a win total this year? What do you have them at a
Just
win
give me
total
the
this year?
seeding. I have them at best being the sixth in the sixth spot in the West. At best, if things really break their way. If they upgrade, it's an evolving roster, then I'll recalibrate my expectations and my prediction. But I think anywhere from 6 to 10, honestly. Tell me how many games Kawhi is playing, and I'll tell you what the record could be. Because right
I
now,
mean,
I
yeah.
think he's going to be at best playing 66, because 66 is where you'd be if you take away one half of the back-to-backs, because they're playing 16 of those. 82 minus 16, you get to 66. And, that's being hopeful that he's only missing the front end or the back end of a back-to-back. I have real concerns about the swelling. When I see there was no necessarily tweak to the knee, not a doctor, never even played one, once did a show with a UCLA doctor on AM 570. But last season was different because it wasn't a step. It was just wear and tear over a season that eventually led to recurring swelling that they couldn't get down for. Justin, we don't even know. It could have been 2 months. We don't know how long it took for the swelling to go down. That's my concern.
That was one of the weirdest sagas of the season. So I was I flew to Sacramento to cover that game. And that shoot around, we got pulled aside and told, you're going to have a Kawhi update. He's not playing. He flew back home. Yada, yada, yada. We're not that concerned. Yada, yada, yada. And then you fast forward. And yeah,
they couldn't control the swelling. That's what it was. And he said, and Ohm brought this up on my Monday show, Ohm Young Masood from ESPN, that you listen to his own words during training camp at Team USA. He said he reached a turning point 2 weeks before showing up at training camp with Team USA. That means it could have been, I don't know, 2.5 to maybe 3 months where they were trying to figure this out.
Ohm and I sat next to each other when Kawhi said that at Team USA, and we I hope Ohm doesn't mind me saying this. We both walked away and had like a 10-minute conversation about what it even meant, because he made a comment after that was like, my knee is like, I can't remember the exact phrase.
He said it was in a neutral state.
That's what it was.
The day before they sent him home.
Yeah, a neutral state. That's what it was. And I don't know what the hell that means. Does that mean it's fine? Does it mean it's? I just took it to mean stable, but I don't.
To me, it means it hasn't flared up. It hasn't swelled up, even though he was doing 5-on-5.
Yeah.
That's my guess.
So what I will say from Team USA is the parts of practice we were able to see, he was always wearing sweatpants. So we never actually got to see anything in terms of like if he was wearing anything on his knee or on his leg at all. It was all in sweatpants from what I can recollect from a couple months ago. I don't know. I mean, all we can go off of is what he said, what Team USA, what Grant Hill said, and I asked a question to Grant Hill before the game against Canada the next night, which was the day that Kawhi got sent home, and then when we talked to Lawrence Frank at Summer League in Vegas, those were the only people who talked about Kawhi's status on the record at the time, and everything. Whatever answer you got from anybody was different from somebody else. And it was the weirdest thing I've ever experienced. On the record, we don't know. We don't know when the swelling went down. We don't know what precautions they took. We don't know things that they did to minimize the issues. When he was asked whether or not he had a procedure done, Lawrence Frank wouldn't specify whether or not he did.
He did say, though, if it was something significant, they would have reported it.
Yes, which reading between the lines for me meant They went in and cleaned up some stuff. Now, that doesn't mean that is what happened. That's how I took it and interpreted it. But that's not what he said. It's just how I read between the lines.
What else can we do?
I feel like I'm over here playing detective, and I'm not I'm not in a good enough state to do that. But I mean, look, everything I heard was that Kawhi looked fine in Team USA camp. That's what I heard, is that he looked fine.
Did
And
you
he looked
see him
good.
work out? Did you see some of the 5-on-5 run outside of the video? Were you there watching some of the practices?
Anything that's on video is all we got to see. Everything that was filmed, in terms of like anything that made its way to the public sphere, was all we got to see. We were only let in for I'm trying to remember now, because it was 4 days of practice, and I think in each of the days, except for the last day, the first 3 days we only came in for like a 10-minute session, and I don't really remember Kawhi. I remember Kawhi for one of them. I don't remember him for two of them, but that doesn't mean he wasn't there. My memory could just be hazy. For the other one, though, he didn't play at all on the court for the last one. I don't remember him being on the court at all. But everything we'd heard was that he looks fine. He looks good. People asked questions about him to Steve Kerr and other players, and they all talked about Kawhi in glowing terms. And then I woke up in the hotel room that day of the game, found out that Kawhi was gone, and was like, "What the hell just happened?" And it was a great Vegas trip. And yeah,
There was something else Lawrence Frank said that I'm also reading into and trying to decipher what happened here. And it was something to the extent or the degree of, we know how Kawhi looks in practice. We know how he
right.
should look. So I wondered if Team USA saw, okay, he's not giving maximum effort, which Kawhi, we know, has levels to him. Regular season Kawhi versus playoff Kawhi. Players never admit to this stuff. I think it's just instinctual. It just happens. It's just subconscious that they start playing harder and show a different motor out there. But he probably was in slowed down version of himself, and maybe they thought that's related to the knee, and maybe that gave them pause for wondering if he's going to be able to make it through the entire run with Team USA. And Kawhi feeling good and making that comment still about his knee being in a neutral state, and then saying 2 weeks before he had a turning point, it probably just made them feel like, well, we don't know if we're going to be able to rely on him over the next month. So maybe we should go in a different direction. Now, I don't like it because he's Kawhi Leonard and Kevin Durant wasn't playing at all, but we know Kevin Durant had a scoring title on the line for Team USA, so they weren't going to send him home, even though he was hurt and didn't play at all during the was it not the knockout round, but the exhibition course of Team USA. That's all I can see.
It's such a weird situation, because I do think that there is some truth to, like, the Clippers know how he recovers and how he looks in practice compared to what Team USA.
And Coach Lou's there, and Lawrence Frank was there for some of it.
Yeah, Lawrence Frank was there for a couple of the days, I believe 2 of the days. So, yeah,
they don't come out and have that press conference if Kawhi didn't feel like he was ready, right? They're speaking on behalf of him because he was so disappointed, I'm sure.
Which one?
The Lawrence Frank press conference regarding Kawhi. Does that happen?
I believe that press conference would probably still happen, only because Lawrence just didn't get asked about Kawhi at that press conference. He got asked about everything. He got asked about PG. He got asked about the Russ situation. He got asked about PJ. He got asked about everything.
Right, but he was there to make a statement about Kawhi off the top.
He was, but that's not just what that conversation was for. That was a all-encompassing interview that was set up for several of us on the beat to talk to Lawrence about everything off-season related. Gotcha. Now, what led off it was the Kawhi thing, because at the time that was the biggest story, because just 4 days before, Kawhi had just left. So it was like, oh, that's a little interesting. So we kind of need to ask about this.
It's topical. I get it.
There was something else I was going to say. Oh, the other interesting caveat in all this is Clint Parks Kawhi Leonard's trainer, has been very vocal on Twitter that this wasn't a Kawhi Leonard Clippers decision. This was Team USA's call.
I mean, from what Lawrence Frank said, he mentioned they were very disappointed not once but twice with Team USA's decision. Of course it wasn't their call, right?
What I will say is that when I asked Grant Hill on the record in the press conference ahead of the game against Canada, when they knew that they would send, like when they knew that they basically couldn't have Kawhi Leonard, needed to send him home, he kind of just didn't answer it. Like it was like generalization speak, which is fine, but it was a very like political answer of just, it happened and kind of stuff like that. So
vague.
I don't know. Look, it goes back to what we said a long time ago. There's three sides to every story, and the truth probably lies somewhere in the middle. I don't know. Maybe one day it will come to light, and we'll just kind of wonder why it took so long.
My opinion, it lies with the Clippers, but that's cool. That's cool. We got Justin Russo on with us, and we're going to close things out here because we're almost reaching the 2-hour marker. And Justin,
I apologize. I'm a talker. You know that.
Hell no. This has been great. I'm the one who's always worried about keeping somebody too long here, but Justin is at FlyByNight, KNITE on X on Twitter. Justin, where can everybody find you for your wonderful work? And I encourage everybody to subscribe. I don't do it with everyone, but I do it with Justin. I am a reader of his, and it is very informative pieces that he gets done for you that are illuminating, as you've sensed here on the pod.
Thank you. It's justinrusso.substack.com. I will tell people that starting in October, because the season's starting, I am turning subscriptions on. It'll be $5 a month, I think is what it is for Substack. So I'm just letting people know ahead of time that, if you do subscribe, I appreciate it. It will be behind a paywall. It's just the nature of the business now, and I apologize ahead of time, but it is what it is. Things ain't cheap no more, folks. And man, when the double cheeseburger at McDonald's ain't $2 anymore.
I thought they're bringing back a $5 value meal somewhere. Aren't they doing that somewhere?
Look,
you get one fry, you get one, one bun, or the top half of the bun.
You get enough soda in the straw, and that's it. It's just all you need. But no, I'm kind of interested to see how the season goes. I'm actually excited to a large degree. I don't know if it's because things are different or just because the closer we've gotten, I'm kind of feeling it again. Like, oh, great, I actually get to go now. I saw someone a long time ago in the chat ask how excited are like the beat to go to the new arena for Media Day. I'm actually intrigued to see how they set it up, because the old Media Day was at the old training facility, obviously, and everything was, as you saw, Adam knows, everything was on the two courts and split into like little sections and stuff. I'm curious to see what they do for this one. Is it going to be the main court? Is it going to be the practice facility? Are they going to have stations in between? Like, how do they do? I'm actually fascinated to see what they do. And yeah, so that'll be the last time I see them for at least a week or so, because I'm not going to Hawaii for training camp. I did it last year. It was great. It was my first time ever in Hawaii, and I wish I could live there because it was so incredible. But I won't be in Hawaii this year. So, but I'm looking forward to Media Day. I'm looking forward to see the arena all the way done. I was there for the Halo board thing, and that was pretty cool. So,
Media Day, September 30th at Intuit Dome.
10 a.m.
We are looking forward to that one.
Cannot wait for that Monday morning 405 traffic, baby.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to start leaving an hour earlier than I used to.
An hour?
From Burbank, probably an hour earlier than I used to go to crypto, which is fine. I am happy to go to Intuit Dome. I'm happy to get there as early as possible because it is a dream arena. Clipper Nation's living it right now.
Yeah, it's what's interesting is so you've obviously been to Intuit Dome. You've parked in the parking structure, right?
Yeah. Was it?
Have you taken like the overhead walkway?
I didn't. We went under.
Oh, you okay? So you just walked across the street?
Yeah, we hit the crosswalk.
Okay, so on the overhead park, like if you take the well, I don't want to keep saying overhead walkway. That's not what it's called. I can't remember
the
what
bridge. I don't know what it's called.
Thank you. Yeah, the bridge, the overpass, I guess.
Yeah.
You take that
Beautiful.
from the parking structure. You walk in straight eye level to the gigantic outdoor like TV board. So it's actually kind of a really cool thing to walk directly and just see that right in front of you the whole way.
It's surreal. I was talking about it with Paul Scheer on here. It feels like augmented reality, like we're wearing a lens, or like you're wearing a lens and you got the Google glasses on, or whatever they were supposed to be. It feels like virtual reality being at this place. Everything is just so high tech.
It's such, it just hits you in the face. It's like there is like a culture shock type deal to it, where like your brain has to adjust to kind of how it is, and it does take a minute. So I will tell baby, like when you walk in, take your time, get used to what you see.
Get comfortable, Clipper Nation. You're finally home.
And for a fatty like me, those seats are very wide, and I enjoy them very much. Listen.
Well, look, the food there's scrumptious. What they have to account for that.
Listen, I'm a sucker for a great seat, and those are some good seats.
I'd say the best seats, the top level seats, are closer to the floor than I think any arena in existence.
Yes.
And what's more important than being closer to the action? They got that part right.
And your eye level with the most gigantic board anyone ever thought to build, because that's what I also need in my life. What's funny is I did have a Clippers person tell me at the Halo board unveiling that they were excited to hear my thoughts on it, because they know how much of the data stuff I love to see. And every piece of data that came out, I was like, I know you didn't build this for me. This feels like a little bit for me, though.
Hey, as Justin Russo, guys, kind of a nerd. What do you think about this stat we're putting up here on the Halo board?
Exactly.
We make room for your Raptor.
Hey, and last comment here. Manny says he can't wait for the sushi dogs. Yeah. You give me one of those. I'm there every day.
Sushi dogs, not with mustard, with wasabi, yo.
Listen, I'll be there every day. Maybe not for the traffic, but I'll enjoy the experience.
I got to run because we got a Clips and Dip coming up in just a little bit. That's coming up a little bit later tonight with myself, Chuck Mockler, Will Updike. Programming note there. This will be the last Clippers talk of the week, unless the Ralph Lawler interview drops later tonight or tomorrow. It could happen, or Saturday or Sunday. Be on the lookout for that. Follow me follow Adam A. at Clippers Talk is the YouTube. And by the way, that Ralph Lawler interview will be a YouTube exclusive. I'm not uploading it to the podcast. It's a visual. We're doing it kind of documentary style. We're including a lot of clips, a lot of plays, a lot of great pictures with his best friend, the GOAT, Bill Walton, who passed away earlier this season. That was one of the reasons I wanted to talk with Ralph and celebrate Bill Walton. So please subscribe to the YouTube side, because that's the only place you're going to get this Ralph Lawler interview that I don't say this very often, but I'm proud of something that I've done for once. And it was mostly just because I got to hang out with Ralph and he's so amazing. So for Justin Russo, I'm Adam Osland. We'll talk to you later.